Hey, everyone. This is Marshaun Olaniyan. Thanks so much for coming back to Love Restored. You are listening to KCCR Brownstone Cityscape. So, listen, we have been in the series of courageous love, what that looks like, what that feels like, how you're going to be showing up. And today we're going to be jumping into episode 4 within this series. If you have yet to listen to this series and or watch this series, then I highly recommend that you go back and really take in all of the lessons, all of the strategies, all of the action items within it, because this will help you to learn as well as how you are doing as far as being able to show up courageously in your own love life and what that takes. Today's topic is having the courage to love yourself before getting romantically involved. What does that look like? Having the courage to love yourself before getting romantically involved. And I know that this is a topic that many of us honestly cannot really even relate to, because most of the time we have already been in relationships, been in situationships, and we've been trying to figure all of these things out. And so instead of trying to figure it out, maybe it's time for you to take a step back from just jumping into your next relationship until you start to figure out what it looks like to love you and be courageous about loving you and what that takes and how you should do that, because that is going to transpire over into how you can show up and love your partner, your significant other, your spouse courageously as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we do that, Love Restored. Why did I start it? I decided to start Love Restored because I didn't get the strategies. I didn't get the sit down talks. I didn't get any real information about what it is for me to love myself, as we'll be taking a deeper dive into today, and what it takes for you to show up courageously in your romantic relationships, how you can show up courageously in this thing that we call life in order to attract a better mate the first time around. And many of us have already experienced some tragedy, some trauma, some toxicity. Either we have seen it and we just like, nope, not going down that road. So maybe you decided to shut off relationships altogether, or you are a part of a larger piece of the population where I'm going to jump in head for first and then figure out things. And so instead of us continuously figuring out things, Love Restored was created so we can take a step back, reflect on the parts that we're bringing that could be seen as toxic, or how and why we need to deal with our trauma beforehand, and or to be actively working on getting those things to settle down. So if and when your partner or spouse actually triggers you, that you have now received the tools for you to take a step back and not allow yourself to go down the rabbit hole of you then becoming toxic because of the trigger. And here's the thing. A lot of times your spouse don't even realize that that is your trigger, because these are the experiences that you had. And especially if you have yet to explain why you get triggered when your partner says this or does this thing, why you shut down, why you literally get up physically and leave the premises because X, Y, and Z happened to you in the past. Most people are really scared with showing up and being vulnerable. And I talked about that last week. Definitely go ahead and check out episode 3, because I talked about that last week. But anyway, so that's why Love Restored was created, to give you a blueprint, something that most of us did not have before we started jumping to our romantic relationships. And so now I'm here to talk about it today. Before you jump into your next relationship, how courageous are you to just love all on you? So without further ado, let's jump into what this actually looks like. So when you have the courage to love yourself before getting romantically involved, it looks like a strong commitment to self-awareness, self-respect, and your own emotional well being. This self-love sets a healthy foundation for any romantic relationship, and it manifests in many ways. And I'm going to talk about several of those ways that it's going to manifest in your relationship. So one of the first things that comes up time and time again when I'm working with my clients, they seem to have a really hard time with setting boundaries. And it even goes a little bit deeper. Maybe they don't have a hard time with setting the boundary, but then even enforcing said boundary that they created may be something that you even struggle with yourself. So when you're setting boundaries, you are confidently establishing and maintaining the boundaries that protect you emotionally, they protect you physically, and they protect your mental health because you know what you're comfortable with and you're not afraid to communicate those limits to others, including but not limited to your significant other, but also just people in general. Knowing that healthy boundaries promote respect in relationships. It also promotes the respect that you have for yourself. Because when you set boundaries, you are teaching people how to treat you. When you set boundaries, but then don't enforce them, it could be your significant other, it could be your friend, it could be a family member. Listen, it could even be your child or children. You set the boundary and then you do not enforce said boundary. That respect level starts to tank. It goes down each time that you said something, right? They crossed over the boundary. You told them what the consequences were going to be, but then you were too afraid to actually go through what said boundary, the thing that you said, the consequence that you said was going to happen. You're afraid for whatever reason. Sometimes we just don't do it with our child or children because it's like, you know what, I don't even want to deal with that. But we are actually setting the precedent that our word does not matter. So when you set the boundary, you are being respectful of yourself, and others will understand that you are being respectful of yourself. But then also, they have the opportunity, let's be real, they have the opportunity to accept said boundary or to reject it. And it's okay if they reject it. It really is. But it is up to you to say either you want to stay and deal with said boundary that was crossed and then continue to be walked over, because after a while you become a joke when you stop enforcing the boundaries that you set, or when you again, the respect level just tanks for you. So setting boundaries is how to courageously show up and love yourself before you get into a romantic relationship, because all of these ways that I'm going to mention bleed over into all of your relationships, including your romantic relationship. So setting boundaries, you have to learn to set boundaries with yourself. And then when you pretty much master setting them with yourself, now you're able to set and enforce them to whomever comes into your life without feeling guilty, without allowing them to make you feel shame, or having you change your word for fear of what they're going to say, what they're not going to say. Are they going to walk away? You guys going to stay friends? You're going to stay in a relationship? All of those things that fear can bring about within us internally. The second way that it manifests with you loving yourself courageously before you jump into your next romantic relationship is by prioritizing your self-care. You actively engage in practices that nurture your well-being, whether through physical care, mental health support, or emotional nourishment. You recognize that you must be whole and happy on your own before you can give or receive love from someone else. Let me say that again for the people in the back room. You recognize that you must be whole and happy on your own before you can give or even receive love from someone else. Prioritizing self-care is not selfish. And here's the thing, even if people are saying that you are selfish because you are practicing self-love and self-care, and essentially you are not buying into the things that they need, you are buying into what you need. That's the thing. Like, seriously, if you have people in your life where you tell them, like, listen, I'm not coming today. Today, I actually just want to relax. Today is a me day. And they have a problem with that, you should have a problem with that person staying in your life. You really should. I mean, like, seriously, because people that really honor themselves as well as honor you as a person in their life, they absolutely understand self-care is important. They understand that you should not be running from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, because essentially and eventually you will burn out. And as soon as you burn out, now you can't be there for anybody, including yourself and those that are very close to you, specifically the people that live in the same household as you. You can't show up for anybody when you are trying to pour from an empty cup. You must be able to go away and to recharge and get yourself recentered in order for you to come back out and full and feel fully refreshed and ready to show up for everybody in your life to the best of your ability. This is a part of what they say, what's the saying? I'm being authentically me. This is how, or at least one of the ways that you can become authentically yourself, by prioritizing your self care. Another way, the third way that being courageous before you jump into a romantic relationship manifests is understanding and knowing your worth. When you do this, you have a clear sense of your own value, and you do not seek validation from your romantic partners or anybody else for that matter. You are aware of your strengths, your imperfections, and the qualities that make you unique, which means you don't settle and or won't settle for being treated poorly or accept anything less than what you deserve. You also understand that people are people and they are going to make mistakes, but it cannot turn into a pattern. You understand and know your worth. You understand and know your value. You know what you're bringing to the table. You know exactly the things that you are willing to give, and you're not giving them to get. But at the same time, you understand that at some point you should be receiving on the receiving end as well. You should not always be the person that has the handouts for anybody in your life all the time, except your child. I mean, depending on the stage and where, how old they are they in the house or they out the house. Like, okay, right, okay, right. You got to take care of your babies. However, grown folk, people that pay bills, the different story. And understanding and knowing your worth before you jump into a relationship is going to translate into who you attract into your life anyway, because we attract where we are at. If you have low self-esteem, the person that you're going to attract is going to have low self-esteem in an area or areas of their life as well. Like attracts like. Right? If you are emotionally immature, you will attract someone that is emotionally immature. The list can go on and on and on. But knowing who you are, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing what your strengths are, knowing also what your weaknesses are. What areas do you need to start working on? That's just as important as you understanding your strengths. Because maybe you are really, really great at um, being vulnerable, but your time, you don't show up on time. You always late, including when it's time to go out on a date, including when it's time for you to show up to a party or whatever, like you're meeting some people and you get there an hour or two late. That don't match up. It don't, because you have to be willing to give what you want. If you want the other person to be on time, guess who need to be on time? You. You have to be willing to accept, to set the example. Be who you want to attract. You want somebody that got money in the bank? You got some money in the bank? You want somebody that has a nice house? Do you got a nice house? Like all of these stipulations that we put on other people and then we don't literally look at ourselves in the mirror and put them on ourselves. Like, how dare you put that on somebody else? The thing that you're not willing to do or give yourself. That doesn't make sense. I digress. Knowing your worth. The fourth way that being courageous in your romantic relation before you get into a romantic relationship manifests is by you being selective. So rather than rushing into any relationship or the next relationship because the person showed up out of fear of being alone, you're intentional about who you allow into your life. You take the time to assess compatibility and shared values, seeking someone who enhances your life rather than completes it. Nobody can complete your life but you, baby, but they can add to it. Just, I'm sure, as you heard before, that your partner can't make you happy. Happiness is internal. It really does come from internal, because if you're looking for outside validation and outside people to make you happy all the time, guess what? Whenever their attitude and mood shifts, guess who attitude and mood shifts? Your own. In spite of what's happening in life, you have to make a decision that I'm going to be happy no matter what. And I'm telling you from personal experience, like from me, I have a lot of people that ask me like what's going on in my life, right? And by the time I'm explaining what's happening in my life, they're like, oh, dang, you got a whole bunch on your plate. You don't never act like it. Why do I need to act like it? Life be lifing with me, just like it be lifing with you. It's a matter of how you decide to show up when life is lifing. You are not the only one that has crappy days. Most people have crappy days. I'm no different. But just because crap is being thrown my way, does that mean that I now have to throw the crap your way as well? No. The buck can stop here, as they say. I decide to make the buck stop. I decide that even though life be life into Marshaun, me, I can decide to still show up and smile. I can decide to still show up and laugh authentically, not fake. I can decide to, right, shake my shoulders off with all of the junk that comes my way. And you have to make a decision about your life as well and how you are showing up. Be selective. And being selective is not just with the romantic person. I know that's what I just said, but it's not just with the romantic person. This is with the people, plural, people in your life, in your circles, making a decision to cultivate the life with the correct circle around you. And correct is different for each person, right? So I'm a believer. I'm not going to be hanging out and everybody in my circle be non-believers. That don't make sense. I'm also an entrepreneur. So a lot of my friendships happen to be believers, Christians, plus entrepreneurs. Okay. I'm also a parent with a young child. So I also actively, intentionally seek out mothers who have businesses, but at the very least has a young child. I try to look for the triple threat: believer, business, young child, specifically a girl. I try to look for that. It doesn't always happen, but my point is I'm being very intentional about the people that are not only around me, but also around my child. You ain't for me. And baby, I understand, because she ain't going nowhere. Anyway, be selective. This is how you show up and be courageous before you get into a relationship, because you already have your standards in place of the things that you're willing to accept, as well as the things that you are not willing to accept when the next partner comes into your life. Be selective, not only with the romantic person, and match up your values and your belief systems and the route that your life is currently taking. You could do that in your friendships. Honestly, you could do that with your family members, like everybody that has your blood is not going to take the same path as you, nor have the same beliefs as you. And so you have to decide who you want to be a part of your life, who you want to be involved in your child or children's life. All of that makes a difference, and not on not I can't, I'm going hard now. Not only for yourself, but also for who they will emulate later on in life. Be selective with everybody in your life. Everybody. All right. The fifth way to be courageous before you jump into a romantic relationship is your own emotional accountability. So you take responsibility for your own emotions and your well-being instead of relying on your partner to make you feel happy or fulfilled. You have to do that yourself. This means recognizing that love doesn't solve personal issues. No. And you address any internal conflicts or past wounds on your own journey of healing. Emotional accountability. How are you taking responsibility for your own emotional well being? Are you constantly looking for external, or are you reflecting and going internal? Okay, I didn't like that he talked to me that way. And definitely didn't like the fact that he talked to me that way, number one, but also he talked to me that way in front of company, number two. So now we need to have a conversation about that, because I felt a certain type of way when he did that. But not blaming him for how you feel, but still having the conversation to say, hey, is this something that you normally do? Because I wasn't feeling that. And I wasn't feeling that because maybe this was a trigger for you. So I wasn't feeling that because I remember when my dad used to do that to my mom. And so that triggers me to make me feel like you're trying to make me less than, because that's the way my dad was making my mom feel. I'm not feeling that. Being able to have grown ass conversations and being real, being vulnerable, but also open and firm and to the point, not meek, not looking down. You can't even hold the person's attention, because instead of you being able to look them in the eye, you are now averting your eyes, and everything else is like, and you whispering, and you're like, and I don't like that. Well, he can't hear you. I don't like that. Like, being able to really speak up and own the things that didn't work well for you, that happened to you, being able to own them, not shy away from them, saying that didn't feel good, being able to talk about your feelings as an adult, not throwing shade later on, not allowing things to just continue to um, fall by the wayside, keep sweeping them under the rug, never talking about these things. And this is where the resentment starts to build up, and the distance between the two of you continues, because you're not able to um, your emotional intelligence is pretty low on the totem pole. Let's just say it that way, because we don't want it to be that way at all. We have to learn how to control our emotions, because if you don't control your emotions will be controlling you. And we've seen people where their emotions control them, right? Where it could even show up in the form of road rage. You've seen some people that'll they get cut off, and now that person that got cut off, they'll start following the person that cut them off, because they are allowing their emotions to control them instead of them controlling their emotions. Or they blame everybody else, and now everybody else is having a bad day because your day was crappy or is crappy. So now you trying to ruin everybody else's day because your day is crappy. Own it. This mess happened to me. I ain't like it. So now how are you going to show up this next time? Everybody has to suffer because you are suffering. We got to grow up. We got to grow up before we get into these romantic relationships. The sixth way that it manifests in your life is self-compassion. You practicing being kind to yourself, especially in the moments of doubt, failure, or challenge, because it's coming. So instead of being self-critical about yourself, you give yourself grace and encouragement, understanding that you are worthy of love and care no matter your imperfections, because all of us have imperfections. None are perfect. The only man that was perfect is Jesus. Okay? Yeah, I told you I'm a believer. That's it. only perfect person that's ever walked on this earth was Jesus. That's it. All the rest of us got flaws. All the rest of us be sinning. All the rest of us be doing some dumb stuff. Even though we know it doesn't really pan out well when we do the dumb stuff. So having self-compassion when you're doubting yourself, when you work on something in a relationship, all right, I am going to be a better communicator. And then when you actually communicate, you either can't get the words out, they're jumbled, or you just mess up completely. Give yourself some grace and mercy. Be vulnerable enough. You know what? I've been working on my communication. And as much as I wanted this to come out a lot better, I see that it came out horribly. Being able to own your stuff. It's okay. None are perfect. You are not perfect. I am not perfect. None. And you are going to mess up, but guess what? Your partner gonna mess up too. And you got to be able to extend that grace and mercy that way as well. The seventh way that this is going to manifest in your life is communicating your needs. I talked about communication a little bit. You have to be clear and assertive about your needs, both with yourself and any potential partner. Self-love empowers you to articulate what you want from your relationship and to engage in open conversations about your expectations and your desires. Communicating your needs, assertive, firm, whatever. But not like, I need for you not to talk to me like that. Listen, talking to me like that is just not the way that this is going to work out. And if you feel that that's the way you're going to communicate with me, we're not going to last long because that doesn't vibe well for me. I don't feel good when you talk to me like that. Being able to clearly, without blame or shame or making them feel guilty, is just a fact. This is a fact. I'm not standing around for this type of talk, for this type of behavior. For me to feel like I'm less than when I'm around your people. For me to feel like I'm taking the back seat when your mama comes. For me to feel like just because you have children with your ex that I have to accept the fact that you always on the phone with your ex. And then claiming that it's always about the child or children. Like, come on. You have to be able to communicate your needs openly, but with respect. But still honoring the fact that, hey, this is what I expect. This is what I will accept. This is what I will not accept. And as we talked about earlier, those boundaries, as soon as they are crossed, now you do the thing that you said that you are going to do. The final one, which is 8, is confidence in being alone. There's so many people out there that are not confident with being alone by themselves before, which is why there's so much of this jumping in and out of the relationship, being in the next situationship because you have a fear of being alone. You must be willing to embrace solitude without feeling lonely or incomplete. This manifests in the way that you understand that you are at peace in your own company, which means you do not need to enter a relationship out of fear or out of need, but from a place of strength and abundance. You must be confident to be alone before you jump into your next relationship, because if you do not, as soon as that person does not include you, or as soon as he decides that he is now done with you, you fall apart. I remember when I had to really start embracing being alone. And it really had to do with the fact that I was born in a large family. I was always around them. I joined the Navy at age of 18. So this is me being around people all the time. Then I got married, being around people all the time. We did all these things together. And then at the age of 27, we got a divorce. And that's when I really had to start being alone with Marshaun. I never had to deal with being alone with Marshaun ever. And so you must be able to be confident all by yourself before your next relationship, because ultimately, loving yourself before getting romantically involved means cultivating a healthy relationship with yourself first. It gives you the strength to engage in love from a place of wholeness, ensuring that any relationship you enter in is built on mutual respect, care, and shared growth. This is Marshaun Olaniyan. This is Love Restored, and you are listening to KCCR Brownstone Cityscapes. I love you guys, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Show up and be courageous before your next relationship. And trust me, when you do that, you will feel better about the person you are once you do say yes to the relationship. I'll see you